Another solo experience that helped me on my self-discovery journey and ultimately helped me step into anxiety was staying at a cabin in the middle of winter. It was 2018, and it was the third or fourth day of the new year, and I booked a trip up north, Ontario, Chatsworth, Ontario, and I actually stayed at this cabin. It was the first time that I've ever traveled anywhere by myself in Ontario. And this cabin allowed me to actually have a very transformative experience. It was the first time. Well, actually, when I look back, actually, I remember Neil, the owner, he walked me through the cabin, a bit of the do's and don'ts and some of the emergency stuff in case. And I remember he told me, you have two options. I know you're a city guy. You have two options. You have the pioneer mode, which is there's the firewood there. There's this stovetop. You can use that there on top of the fireplace. Or you have the city mode. I have a backup generator there. You can plug your iPad in, your computer, all that other stuff. And I remember giggling. I was like, no, I'll do the pioneer mode. I really wanted to come up here to disconnect, and I really wanted to come up here to really connect with myself. And I remember it had about 4 or 5 acres of land for me to just explore. And the biggest takeaways from that experience, and that solo experience, were the following. For one, I realized that a lot of the thoughts that I was having in terms of the fear, even going up into that, weren't even mine. They were other people's fears and insecurities that, if I allowed it to infiltrate my mind, would have stopped me from even taking the trip or experiencing the trip. 2, there's something about being surrounded by nature and being surrounded by trees, even in the dead of winter. Because the funny thing was, since it snowed obviously and all that other stuff, it was so quiet. Like it was so quiet. It was almost eerie. And I remember when I first got up there, I stepped out of the car and my ears were actually ringing because I haven't been around that kind of silence in a long time. And then 3, that the anxiety that I was facing going up there and the thoughts I were having were very different than the anxiety I faced when I ran into like a wild animal. The feelings are very similar, but one is something that's happening within my mind and another was happening right in front of me. And what I realized in that moment was before going on that trip, I was allowing my anxiety, and when I say anxiety, I mean the anxiety of the mind, my mind, the thoughts just running around, control my life. Because when I faced an animal, or what I thought was an animal in the bushes or whatnot, and that anxiety, that physical anxiety of the fight or flight actually made sense. Am I going to stand my ground? Or am I going to run? And I remember standing in it and staying in it because that was a true test of whether or not I was going to let the anxiety stop me. I was already told there weren't any bears or anything like that. You might see these little birds or chickens or whatnot. But I didn't allow that to stop me. Obviously, I was smart about it. I played cool, calm, and collective. I collected my thoughts and I stood there. And what I realized was, wow, like a lot of times when I was faced with anxiety of the mind through the thoughts, there's nowhere to run. You can't run from yourself. But when I face anxiety in real life, especially with an animal or some sort of animal, I had the ability to escape it and to run to somewhere more secure, whether that's back to the cabin or whatnot. So that was a very eye-opening experience in the difference between the mental anxiety versus the physical anxiety. And also what I learned about that experience was, man, like, even having to go use the outhouse at night, like I had to grab my my lantern and actually walk a minute or two to the outhouse in order to use the washroom, right? In pitch darkness by myself. Am I gonna pee myself because I'm afraid to step outside and do what I need to do, or am I gonna do what needs to be done? And through challenging myself in those with those opportunities, I was able to set yet and again another positive reference point.